The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Whitfield Report Live. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, here from South Florida, and joining Max, Mortheous, and I tonight is Mr. Dennis Brennan, an author and attorney who has written a book. And let me see if I can find the title here real quick. And Dennis has an interesting background as an attorney. So, sir, welcome to the program. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks a lot for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Appreciate you coming on. So just to start off, what is your general background, sir?
Well, this is my first book, but prior to that, for the last 35 years, I've practiced law as an attorney in Illinois in various forms. Corporate law, I've been a litigator. I've done a little bit of criminal law, not much. Big on real estate transactions, so forth. Even advocacy. We call it advocacy instead of lobbying. So
I was immediately going to point out that specifically practicing law in Illinois already triggers for me that that's probably more complicated than a lot of other states.
We've had our ups and downs in Illinois, yes.
Just because law in Illinois, sometimes is a tricky issue, and that's where, especially have you I guess this assumption, but have you dealt with like the sort of corrupt monotony of it all, like everything is this way, so you should just do whatever kind of thing? Because that's what a lot of people in Illinois and the political side of things report.
Yeah, when I was in law school, we had one of the biggest criminal cases involving the court system. It was called Greylord, where I forget the exact number, but let's say it's about 30 judges were convicted. It was certainly in that area, 30 to 50, between attorneys, judges. They were fixing cases. So that was my entry into law. I was in law school, what was going on. And
that's the kind of context of history I think people even miss. It's like they know about when people fixed a sports game. They're up in arms about it right now with the NBA, right? But
Yep.
Imagine they're fixing trials, right? That's and then being on the receiving end of that and having no way to fight back sucks especially.
It's very difficult. A friend of mine who I didn't know at the time, he was a little older, but he had told me he was practicing here, and he left because he couldn't practice. He moved to California of all places, because you basically had to pay off people for especially traffic cases. The traffic courts were unbelievably corrupt. One judge, though, even fixed a murder case, and he later ended up killing himself before he was indicted. So
Yeah, I've
And that's all over, though. I
I
don't want to pick on anybody in particular because Massachusetts, famously, you might even have heard of this, had the criminal investigative forensic pathologist that was completely irresponsible and got thousands of cases overturned in the process with the evidence.
mhm.
So like this is a thing that, and it was because she was getting paid in some cases to look the other way. In other cases, she just didn't really put much effort into it. And thousands of people's lives actually hung in the balance in those cases. And it all is just like swept under the rug in some cases, you know? Yeah, she was punished.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, but a lot of those guys are still in jail.
So I apologize for the delay, but I found the link to your book in my show notes. So your book is titled DC Swamp Strikes Back, Aaron Burr, Donald Trump, and Their Similar Battles, Victims Separated by Centuries. Now, Aaron Burr is someone who we don't hear a lot about in history, unfortunately, and I think that's unfortunate. And
Except as like a pop culture reference, right? Like there was a milk commercial where it was about a trivia question, or it's like referenced. He's referenced on like Seinfeld, things like that. But yeah, like most people wouldn't know even the name Aaron Burr. And if funnily enough, because of the musical of Hamilton, which in my mind doesn't characterize him particularly well, or any of the history involved anyway. It's a fun piece of art though. That's the only ways I'm aware of that average like media consuming populace would even know of Aaron Burr, which is a shame with how tied he is to the history of this country and how important the debate sort of between him and Hamilton, mainly, but through many people of federalism versus anti-federalism. I think that's a question we
yeah,
grapple with today.
so I have to ask first off, sir, what inspired you to write this book? First
It
of
is a
all,
very specific topic for a first book. Yeah.
It
yeah,
is. It is very specific. You know, I'm one of those guys who always thought, "Hey, I could write a book," but I was always too lazy to do it, and wasn't sure what I would write about. Thought, "Hey, I could do fiction. I could make up stories. I've been making up stories for a long time. I'm an attorney, so that should be easy." But what really did it was a friend of mine wrote a book about Aaron Burr, and he brought it to my office, and he said, "You know, why don't you take a look at it? Tell me what you think." So a few weeks later, he came back and we were sitting down. And I said, "Wow, a lot of stuff in here I didn't know about Aaron Burr. Great book." I said, "But I think you missed the story." I had to throw in the but. It was a good book, but at that time, we had the campaign going on for the presidency. And I saw so many parallels between Burr and what was going on with him and then what was going on with Trump at the same time. And he's a Democratic political consultant, so he looked at me like I'm nuts. And, I said to him basically, "Well, if you're not going to fix this, maybe I'll do it." And he kind of shook his head like, "No, you're not." And
Well, it
I did.
certainly makes sense to us because we've been sitting here making parallels with Trump and Nixon, who also famously was always compared with Aaron Burr for the same reasons.
Yeah, and history
yeah,
history wasn't kind to Aaron Burr, right? I mean,
No.
when we go and talk about Aaron Burr, and I make the point in the book, most of us what we know, and I don't know if it's an indictment on our own ability to learn or on our teachers, but all we remember is, hey, there was a duel between him and Hamilton. Hamilton died, and Burr is hated forever on after that. And you don't really
yeah,
know much else. But there's a
Again,
whole lot.
leading up to even like I said, the musical now, which
Yeah.
lionizes Hamilton as like the pure good in the situation, and Burr was just a bad guy. I mean, I like it as a piece of art, but like as a piece of history, it's offensive for a couple reasons. But I digress. that's like the modern people's interaction with this part of our history. I don't, even for me, and I often lament that younger people seem to have less American history than even I do in their schooling, it seems, when they talk to me. But even for me, yeah, it was the duel. And that's what you're supposed to know. And when I started reading things like the Federalist Papers and looking into the history of this country on my own, because I didn't go to school, I'm just a nerd. You know, I graduated high school. That's my credentials. But I really liked history, you know. And so I found that, wait a minute, this guy's way more important than that. And that's what I said before casually, like, people don't care about this kind of thing when I talk about the parallels of history, oftentimes because they don't know any of it.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, or they can't. I guess in a way, it's hard for a lot of modern minds to put themselves in the shoes of history without it shown to them, you know. We're a very visual storytelling society where everything moves so fast. It just seems like a lot of our history gets lost in the sauce, in my opinion. You remember, Sam, I spent a whole episode just going off, you know, on a tangent about Thanksgiving a couple years ago because it's local history to me. And
Yeah.
and it's important, you know. A lot of people have different narratives on it, and we'll probably do that again this year. But for the people of the Wampanoag tribe that I grew up with and the other people here, it's a holiday of coming together to fight hardship. And then I see other people's opinions on it. I'm like, yeah, but the people who actually did the whole thing, see, in America, we write everything down. History in America is great because we are the most thorough history keepers I could, you know, outside of like Rome and like Hitler's Germany. But like American history, you know, every house, who built it, you know, things like that. There's like records of so much that you can dig into and writings and things. And it's just completely under taught in schools. So I love when somebody does like what he's doing here, draw the parallel right with modernity. And I assume you're going to have to inform people of the story from the beginning. And if that's the case, right? They probably more familiar with the Trump story, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Right.
the Trump part is easy, right? We lived it, you know, or most of us have lived it. And you know, as I was writing this, the campaign was going on, the second campaign. So there was a lot of information on Trump, and that's really what sparks it when you read about Burr, and all of a sudden you're, you know, quite frankly, I guess I'm learning it for the first time, or if I did learn it in school, I forgot about things like
They
the
certainly didn't go into much depth for most of us. Yeah.
no, I mean they might have touched on the Burr conspiracy or what was known as the Spanish conspiracy, but if they did, that went in one ear and out the other. I didn't really retain it, and when
Well,
you go back and start seeing it, you're like, oh, that's I remember some of this, but not enough. And you start seeing the parallels of the cases against Burr and the interaction of the media and government, which we have a real problem here now in our country with. I think the media,
yeah.
they act. There's some comparisons to back then too.
Well, sir, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell the audience who was Aaron Burr and why was he important? Have you learned anything in your research that shocked you, um, or surprised you for
Yeah,
this
I think
book?
first, you know, Aaron Burr, to me, after seeing all the, you know, different descriptions of him and how he was kind of, you know, when we talk about there's a lot of history, yes. And some of it's, you know, it's written by the victors, and sometimes the victors aren't real fair about it. And I worry a little bit about Trump going forward, how that plays out. But with Burr, he was vice president for Jefferson. He ran with Jefferson twice. Jefferson, the first time when he ran for president, lost to Adams. Burr was his vice presidential candidate. He was kind of an outsider, much like Trump when he entered the Washington scene. And Burr, to his credit, when Jefferson lost, a lot of Jefferson's people were anti Burr because he was from New York He wasn't part of the Virginia mafia, so to speak. And they had this design that they would have presidencies continuously out of Virginia. So Burr, when they lost the first time, he took a lot of heat from those Jefferson supporters, although Jefferson didn't blame him. But instead of sulking about it, Burr went back to New York. At that time, electoral votes were cast by the legislators. So you had to win the legislature. In New York, he went back there and elected people that would be loyal to him and Jefferson. So 4 years later, they had another election against Adams. Same, he ran as vice president. Burr, because he had changed New York's voting, they were able to beat Adams. So Jefferson and Burr actually tied. And in those times, one of those mistakes they made when they set up the Constitution, at that time when a tie between the president and vice president, if they tied, it went to Congress for a vote between those two. And that caused more problems for Burr with the Jefferson people because Burr went home to New York and waited for the vote. He didn't do anything. Some of the Jefferson people thought he should have been outspoken and said, it's Jefferson's. I'm just the vice president. So Jefferson had to make a deal with the Adams group to make some appointments. And, in that way, Jefferson became president. But I would say more than anybody, Burr had the most to do with, Jefferson winning that election. And he never was really credited with that. And that kind of brings you into that term he served. In the next term for Jefferson, he basically dumped Burr as a candidate for vice president. A lot of pressure to do so. As he told Burr, I'm just going to let it play out amongst the party and let them decide. Well, he kind of knew that would be bad for Burr, and Burr had already done everything he could for him. He had brought in the votes. So Jefferson wasn't going to lose those votes any longer. They were part of the party.
Right.
And, Jefferson, after, that break, Jefferson and Burr kind of became enemies. And I think what you see a lot, and we go through in the book, there's a lot of what I would call lawfare back then, and you can compare it to what Trump had to go through. Where in Jefferson, much like I think at least the Biden administration, if not Biden himself, were very invested in whether Trump would be prosecuted all over the country. And that parallel, the more you read about it, you realize, wow, Jefferson was directing prosecutions from the White House to get Burr. And not only to convict him, I mean, in some ways, Trump is lucky because the charges against him were so, shallow in depth. Burr, they went right after him, charged him with treason twice. You don't want to, treason's a tough one. So this guy was facing a life or death situation. And
famously, when they put some of the charges out on Trump, is like one of the rants, like clips of this video of me saying that they were charging him essentially at that point with a death penalty crime. And I kind of freaked out about that because of the parallels a couple of times in history where treason charges are thrown out. Yeah, that's a serious charge. They ended up, what was it, 34 felony paperwork cases or as much. But at the time, when it was suggested they might charge him with death penalty offenses, there's this clip of me just kind of flipping. I just say, you know what, do it, because that would be the end of our country, you idiots. You're taking lawfare to such an extreme that you don't even see it. But they ended up walking it back, I would say.
Yeah. And so, like, I don't want to, I don't want to interrupt what you were saying too much, but one of my other questions is, as an attorney, how do you feel about the way Trump has been treated by the legal system, by and large? We don't get to talk to too many legal experts on the show much. So.
No, I think that's a great question. And, it kind of divides the legal community because by and large, we're paid to advocate for whoever we're representing. And I think that's become politics too. But what I see and what I've seen from the beginning with Trump is these cases were largely manufactured. That like some of these, a good example is in the Georgia case where they still recite this idea that he called the Secretary of State and said find 11,000 votes or 13,000 votes. And I've spoken to people about that. And they say, how can you defend him? He was obviously telling him to make up the votes, but there's an innocent construction there. Find the votes, recount the votes, make sure these are all counted, that we're doing it right. And if you come up with those votes, we're good. That's how I see it. I think that case, the document case, which you guys are referring to in New York, as far as I know, in the history of the United States, we haven't had that case, those charges done before, where you take a misdemeanor that otherwise you couldn't charge because of the statute of limitations. And then the only way you can charge him is to bring a felony in. And they do it through a federal, offense on whether you reported something correctly on an election paper, which, 99 times out of 100 is going to result in you just having to pay a fine. And so it seems those cases seem very
Except if
made up.
you're an orange man, and then you should go to jail forever and ever because reasons.
Well, and that's the problem, I think. And when you look at those from a legal aspect, or and you see, well, those seem pretty, shabby as far as charges. If you want to prosecute, especially if you want to prosecute a former president, it'd be bad enough if you were prosecuting me or you. You'd say, well, this thing happens. But to go after a president, we don't do that, for the good of the country. Nixon wasn't charged, he was pardoned instead. And I think part of that was Gerald Ford didn't want to see the country go through, a divisive trial where you're actually charging the former president.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a weird, sort of boomer remembrance of it too, where they all act like they weren't okay with him just stepping aside. If you weren't okay with that, then, why didn't you lock him up forever, right? They act like, oh, he just got away with everything. First of all, I'm a Nixon guy where I'll say I don't think he did as much wrong as people want to believe. But beyond that, he stepped down, and a lot of people are still like the boomer generation who experienced it at the time seemed to be fine with him just stepping away, right? And he got pardoned, and but now I hear boomers are like, oh, Nixon's the worst thing ever. He got away with it. Got away with what exactly? Watergate was a disaster,
Yeah, it
for
best,
everybody. Not even for the Democrats, right? It wasn't good for anybody.
No, but I think in the end, what it comes down to is what Nixon found out they had broke in, and he covered it up, or he agreed to, he didn't say anything, if that's part of being the cover up. I think what's funny is, there's a great story with a book. The media has really changed since Watergate. I think part of the problem with the media is because of Watergate, because Woodward and Bernstein became, stars, basically.
Celebrity journalists, yeah.
Yes. And then everybody wanted to be Woodward and Bernstein. That's when I went to school, I studied journalism. And, some people wanted to do it the right way, but an awful lot of people that got into the business and have been successful have, become celebrities or want to be celebrities. Because now you can make a lot of money being a journalist, and it's become that you're advocating rather than reporting. And I think, just to make the point, Woodward and Bernstein, there was a book that Woodward wrote called Wired about John Belushi, Saturday Night Live. And Bill Murray had a great quote. He said he only got through about 5 pages of it, and he threw the book down, and he said, I couldn't read it anymore. He said, I knew this guy. I was friends with this guy. I know what was going on there. And this is all third-hand gossip. There's no real reporting here. And he said, oh, my God, they framed Nixon. I mean, that's,
yeah.
It's funny, but that's the conclusion he came to.
I
That
don't know if
hey,
you're familiar with Michael Malice, but I love Michael Malice. He talks
yes,
all the time about the history of yellow journalism in this country is way longer than people think. Even before the idea predates the term, really,
mhm.
of big press outlets advocating political policies and pretending they're not, goes as far back as this country.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
we do this in the book. I talk about the party press era, which is something Burr had to fight. You know, you have Alexander Hamilton, for instance, started the New York Post. Newspaper still around, oldest newspaper, but the parties either supported these newspapers and pamphlets, or they outright owned them, and a lot of the same people were reporting on themselves. So you had this
The
advocacy going
Boston
on
Globe,
then.
notably, was one of those,
Yeah,
one
but
of the
I
older
think
papers. Yeah,
yeah. Now I think what you see, right now, journalism is at a very low point. I mean, there's very few people to trust, and all the polling that's out has, journalists are thought of as, the worst profession as far as trustworthiness. Used to be used car salesman. Then I think
Yeah.
us lawyers got in there for a while. Now it's journalists, and it should be
wow.
the opposite, right? You should trust
You
journalists.
guys are only in the mix when there's nobody obviously to point out, right? And then
Right.
it's always the lawyers and maybe like bankers or something, right? But no, it is true that journalists have probably, I think only Congress has a lower approval rating than the mainstream media, and they don't even
Yeah.
understand why they're getting killed by dumbasses on YouTube, like with a mic, you know. And it's because that guy is
Yeah.
at least saying something that the person listening feels is authentic, and you're not. That's what it really boils down to.
Right. People don't believe that the mainstream news is authentic anymore,
Yeah, they don't even,
if it
like,
ever was.
sometimes it's like an event will happen, and whatever reporting they saw on it from CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News, they'll go and they'll look at like just videos of an event and be like, wait a minute, everything they told me isn't quite. I see how you would say it that way, but if you said it that way, it means you have an agenda. People aren't as stupid as they think.
Well, I think
On
that goes for all of us, right? I'll get the Chicago Tribune delivered to the house, and I'll be reading the stories, and some of the stories are Associated Press. That's another problem with the local newspapers anymore. They're all taking these stories from the Associated Press and popping them in the paper. And you can read on to the next page, and you won't have the facts yet. The basics of journalism are the five W's, the one H. You're supposed to have that in there,
Mhm.
and it's simple to do, but they're not doing it. What you will find are a lot of opinions
You'll
or
get to
things that,
this is my favorite one in thing that's not even presented as opinion. It's sort of what you just said, but it's really noticeable when you start seeing it, where they will have something that refutes their headline in paragraph 3.
yes,
Like the actual headline nugget that they used is a misrepresentation that is refuted within the article itself because they know that the average person is not going to read to paragraph 3.
right. And that's why journalism in general, you were doing the five W's and the H. So if they never get past that, okay, well, they've got the gist of the story. But
Yep.
now you've written something else and they don't even know what it is. It does, often you have to investigate yourself. I think to that point of people going to videos and checking it out. Charlie Kirk is a good example on how social media now is considered the news. And I guess Elon told us it is. So we are the news. And, if that's the case,
May God
you'll
have
see.
mercy on all of our souls, but
Well,
yeah.
perhaps. But when you see this, you see somebody say, Charlie was a racist or Charlie was a misogynist or whatever. Good for Charlie Kirk and his organization, because there's so much evidence that you can pull up on the internet and disprove that so quickly. but it's funny how people won't do that. Like I would
Right.
look up, they'd say he's a racist.
Yeah.
Let me see where they get that. And then you see the context of what they're saying. It's like, well, that doesn't make him a racist. So
Yeah, or they'll just make up stuff that he never even said, like in graphic meme format, and you can
Well,
easily fact check it, and
and
it's
that's
not
why my
true at
wife
all.
is an example of like, she liked Charlie Kirk a lot, specifically because of the people saying things about him. She went and checked out his videos on TikTok or whatever and was like, hey, man, he's not only saying stuff that I don't find objectionable, I agree with a lot of it, because she's very Christian, right? And
Yeah.
obviously she's devastated by what has happened here. But she literally, them calling him names and saying all these bad things about him drove her to even check it out in the first place, and then find that she agreed with it.
On,
Well,
on,
Not
that's
everything,
on
of
the
course. Nobody agrees 100%, but she found a lot she agreed with.
yeah, and then on the flip side, like you mentioned, we have activist journalists, and I'm not sure if you could call Candace Owens a journalist anymore, but on the flip side, you do have activists on the right, quote unquote, who just want to make up all these conspiracy theories for clicks and speculate on what happened when the
He's been
authorities.
fuming about
It's
this for a
it's a pretty
while. Sam's been, he
it's a
doesn't like
pretty
it.
open and shut case.
no, I
So
agree with you, Sam. It is disheartening that people that said they were Charlie Kirk's friend when he was alive, and perhaps even benefited financially from Charlie Kirk and his organization, will
Perhaps.
now be out there. I guess it's easy to build up a following by being controversial, and
Well,
that's what some of these people.
yeah,
without saying the person in particular, the one of those people, long before they met him, has always been this kind of attracted to negative attention person. So it's like, I don't even take that person seriously, whether they were his friend or not. They've always said inflammatory things, and I feel that that's their whole reason for being, kind of deal. But a lot of people, saying stuff about it. I'll tell you what I think. One thing, the element I don't see anybody talk about is, I think that the shooter, if again, we're going with the official story that we have as of right now, because there's been no trial, one, and all we have is that this guy is the person in custody, right? Looking at the video and how he did everything, I have had the suspicion all along that I think he used AI in the planning of this. And the reason I think that is because it's a lot of like superhero shit that doesn't work out in real life kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Jumping off a building and all that crap. I think that he had a basic idea of what he was going to do. I'm not saying the AI talked him into anything, but it does seem like I've watched people get gassed up by AI into all kinds of crazy shit at this point, including I'd love to send you a link and see what you think of it. But there's this YouTuber. He goes by Coop, just COOP, and he had an AI actually give him the plans for and plan a terror attack for him with a specific target. And it gave him a manifesto, even though he didn't give it a political reason. It just like gave a general manifesto that sounds spooky. And then I see what happened with the Charlie Kirk shooter, and I see like, does a 20-year-old kid think of this plan that people are literally saying when they saw it, this must be a professional. Now I'm thinking he did some things maybe that people saw that way because an AI told him that was how to do it. That's what I think.
Yeah, but I know people said that immediately because of the shot and all that, and then all of the news channels, whether it's Fox or MSNBC or ABC, had their own experts on who are military, and they all were saying, no, that's an easy shot.
That's
Anybody?
easy. I mean, if you've shot a 30-06, you don't like to think about such horrible things, but it's not a hard shot,
Right?
And that's what those guns are made to do specifically, actually.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff gets debunked. I mean, I saw him go off the building. it looked like he kind of hurt himself coming up at the building.
Right. And that's what I mean when I say, like, that's the kind of thing the AI would say, oh, yeah, and you can jump off the building, and if you roll, you'll be okay, or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and these Zoomers, man, people underestimate how many of them are listening to AI every day of their life for basic shit.
Yeah. Well, that's, hopefully that's not a basic thing that you're doing. The idea that you're planning to assassinate someone, which
No, but it wouldn't
terrible.
surprise me for somebody of that generation to use it as a normal part of the process, because that's how they plan everything.
Right.
And then I see the things that look a little action movie-y, like jumping off a building, and I'm like, but that's the kind of thing an AI would tell you to do. That's just my suspicion anyway.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I don't know much about that building, so I wouldn't know if there's another way off the roof, but he obviously didn't plan anything else. And, I thought it was a pretty good jump. I wouldn't try it. But
it was a good jump. That's true. I've jumped off, and that's the other thing when people are like, whoa, he jumped off that. That's like a professional. I'm like, I used to have a barn behind my house. It was about the same height from the second floor. And I jumped off that motherfucker for fun. This was like a thing. We'd get drunk and we'd jump out of the barn onto the ground. Ha, ha, ha. Sometimes the guy would fall wrong and hurt his ankle, and we'd all laugh at him. Like, no, you can make a 1-story jump without destroying your whole body.
Yeah.
Especially if you do it like he did. The guy obviously wasn't, he was physically fit enough to take the fall.
So I have to ask, Dennis, you mentioned that you started out wanting to major in journalism. What made you decide to switch to law? And then the other thing I have to ask is...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have to ask, too, I see in your background you have a lot of, books of Trump and Reagan and whatnot. So it seems to me that
up there too.
it seems to me that you, I don't want to assume anything, but you seem to be very, conservative. And so I have to ask, what's it like being a conservative attorney as well?
In Illinois.
Yeah, in Illinois.
Obama land, basically.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We'll take, the first part of that question. Yes, I thought I would be a journalist. And when I graduated from college, before I actually graduated, the year before, I was talked into taking the LSAT. Just, hey, you never know, take it. My parents were telling me. My older brother was already in law school. So I said, okay, I'll go do that. And I did. And, luckily I went then, because the day after I was playing football and broke my arm, and I couldn't have taken it if it was the next week. But, so I had that in my back pocket. I did well on the test, and I thought, okay, I've got it there, but I still want to do the journalism thing. And when I got out, there were 2 job offers. One was in Iowa at a radio station making, I believe it was $13,000 a year. The other one was in Arkansas for $9,000. I was working at the time part-time at a grocery store. I was making $14,000 part-time. And I thought, well, this is stupid. I agreed, I think, is what took me towards the law, saying, well,
that is the writer's fucking conundrum, right? Is so many writers come out of college with that exact thing. Is like, I could make more doing minimum wage than the thing that I want to do when I start out. Yeah.
And if I didn't have the law school test, the LSAT, and I had a good score, and I thought, okay, I can do that, and I can keep working at this grocery store, making $14,000 or so, and part-time, let's do that. And I can always go back to journalism, and I'll have this law degree. So that was kind of the plan. In Illinois, when I started in law school, here's the downside. There were 35,000 attorneys. 3 years later, when I graduated, there were 70,000. I believe now there's 85,000, 90,000. It's like everybody got the idea, let's be an attorney. And that's not good for those of us that want to make money. You
Man,
need
that's
less.
what happened to everybody in my class that went to school for IT.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody jams in, and it's probably the same way. Like Mike Rowe talks about, hey, people, we need plumbers, we need electricians, and we do. But I probably wouldn't be the guy to do that because I can't put anything together or fix anything. So it was probably going to have to be something
No.
easy.
This
Like
is
law.
America. We need lawyers too.
We need lawyers to sue each other, and but practicing, I'll tell you, there's
Hey,
a
you ever
story.
get accused of something, you understand you need a lawyer in this country.
Well, you do,
Yeah.
and you could find one. But I was in Will County, which is one of our collar counties. You have Cook County's the big one, and then like I'm in DuPage, and then Will County. But I practiced basically in 7 or 8 different counties over the time. But I was in Will County on some case. I was representing a developer at the time, and in the courtroom that day, and it usually doesn't happen, but one of my brothers was there as an attorney representing someone, and there were several attorneys sitting around, and some of them I knew, so I didn't, but I was sharing my thoughts, and I was a tad more conservative than probably everybody there, and I had to walk away to talk to a client, and when I did, one of the attorneys who didn't know it was my brother said, "Boy, that guy's a conservative nut." And I thought, and he told me that later. I thought, no, you guys are all nuts. I mean,
Yeah, it happens when you have the most basic opinions. Like, I get
Yeah.
that label, and I'm like a hardcore punk rock metalhead former bouncer, right? And like, so I'm expected, obviously, to be some kind of far left.
Same here.
Yeah, but frankly, far left is not punk rock and hasn't been since I was a child.
Yeah.
They are the system.
but-
They are the Pink Floyd, The Wall. They're the fascists. That's like them now. You can't have a thought. You can't have an opinion. And it's crazy when your opinions are like really mild. And
both
also
both
art, man. The censorship of art drives me up a wall.
yeah.
1000%.
I was also going to say that both Mortheous and I have physical disabilities, and the amount of like lefties who are shocked when they find out that I'm more conservative.
Mort got called an Uncle Tom of disabled people.
Yep.
Yeah,
because he's not on the far left. Mort is a
I'm just
centrist.
slightly right of center.
Yeah. Mort is like, Mort didn't even vote most of his adult life, but that's not enough for them.
Well, when I was in college, I was told that even though I'm disabled, I have too much privilege because I'm white. I'm a white male, in the middle class.
Same idiots run around screaming that they're neurodivergent. And it's like, you understand that includes things like cerebral palsy, right? So the comparison is, if I have, a low-level neurological disorder, I'm somehow the same as somebody like Sam or Bort, is kind of offensive in and of itself. But no, go on. Things like that. I see. It's like,
isn't
they
that
try to tell him
now?
he can't even use the word cripple, and we've cited it's used in the Bible for one, and also that's the word he identifies with. I thought that was what we were supposed to go with.
However you identify, you get to choose. I think the problem, you see it even with anything now during political discourse, right? If you're against an open border, for instance, you're a racist. It's like, no, I'm against an open border. I mean, I don't care who's coming in. It could be a bunch of old white guys like me walking in, and it's I don't want that either.
There are illegal immigrants in Boston and around it that are Irish. That's the same ancestry as me, man. They need to go back too. I stand by that. They are illegal. They are here. They've overstayed their visa or whatever it is. Just like I don't play no favorites in this game, because I know so many legal immigrants that struggled so hard to get here. It's not even it's like I'm defending other people of the same ethnicity in the same breath, but no, go on about racism, right?
Well, and it's the same way with Mandami being elected in New York. I had people today tell me, you know, because he's Muslim, you're a racist if you don't, I don't like him, obviously, as you can
Right.
tell probably by the books and our conversation. But I'm like, no, I generally don't like him because he's a socialist, maybe a communist, and that's a bad idea for
Well,
New York
and his
City.
policies, some of them, you can exactly see what's going to be wrong with them already, like a government-run grocery store. Like we know how that goes. But there's the thing a lot of people don't realize, right? Is that the Republican side just kind of gave up on this election until it was, oh, vote for Cuomo. Well, here's the reality of that. The people of New York weren't going to vote for Cuomo. It wasn't
Cuomo
going to happen.
killed tens of thousands
He's
of
the
elderly
most.
people.
If you tell them establishment guy or new guy at this point, they're just going to pick the new guy. They don't even care that he's a socialist. A lot of them, they just care he's not Cuomo.
Yeah.
Also, if anybody in your family was killed in the COVID lockdowns because Cuomo's brother put them into a nursing home, you probably wouldn't vote for him as well. And that's a lot of people in
Nope.
New York City. People would be surprised how many people lost a loved one because of the decision that Cuomo made as governor.
Yeah. I mean, I think Como was a bad. I don't know why Como even ran, honestly.
Because they had nobody and they got caught with their pants down. Both Democrats and Republicans in that race got caught with their pants down, and that's why he's now the mayor. That's why. But it's just New York City. I don't live there. I would probably not want to continue to live there anyway, no matter who was the mayor, if I did.
It's really not surprising to me either because New York was headed so far left as was that to me, this is really my only take on it is it kind of seemed like this was an eventuality for New York and hopefully they kind of now they're going to be subject to this and in 4 years hopefully they can wake up and say, oh, we've made a mistake. So
maybe we'll
Yeah.
see.
But some of these ideas that Mandami has put forth, they've been tried and they've failed. Not only in other countries, I mean, even the grocery store idea, the government run grocery store. The one in Kansas City just closed this year after losing, $18 million. At some point, we have to look at the past, the history, right?
The government
say,
here
that
ran
didn't
liquor
work.
stores, okay, for a long time. The
Yeah.
liquor stores in Massachusetts were run by the government until they went so bankrupt that they started selling licenses right before Prohibition hit. Then when they reopened back up after Prohibition, shock of shocks, they have private stores now instead of government runs. Another place, though, you can see the government-run liquor store still to this day is New Hampshire, and they suck. They're terrible. You know what I mean? The prices are, I guess, reasonable, but otherwise, if you want anything stocked, nobody there is like you go to a liquor store, unless you're like some goofball that's just going to buy Bud Light or whatever. You're like, hey, what do you talk to people and get recommendations of things and what's the special kind of thing. Not at a government-run liquor store, you don't. It's like
Right.
the DMV, only with booze. And I imagine maybe some people would like a grocery store like that, but the other thing is the government can't manage a paper bag, and so every time they run a store, they go bankrupt. And you don't have to look to the USSR to find examples of this. You can look right here in America.
Right.
Detroit also had publicly run grocery stores for a very short time.
Yeah, the idea, it's been discussed in Chicago too. They haven't done it yet, but the idea is silly. It's but you would think at some point the voters would demand that you come up with
But it's
something besides a lie of the past that
because
didn't
it's a
work.
response to a problem of the present, which is the food deserts that they suffer in these major cities. And so the people, this is the problem: is that you're offering bread and circus to the starving folk, and they need the bread.
Hmm.
And so that's what he's selling. He's selling them bread and circus. They bought it. We'll see how that works out for New York City. Didn't work out for Rome so well, but you know, I I think there are a lot of Republicans freaking out over it. It's like, do you live there? One, do you do business there? In a lot of cases, a lot of us do, whether we know it or not. New York City is the epicenter of a lot of East Coast business, but generally speaking, is this going to disrupt your business? Probably not, unless you do a lot of business there. And so for a lot of us, it doesn't affect us at all, and it's probably better to just chill and watch the results and then laugh at it. Because I believe that God favors the funny.
Well, whether that's true or not, I think what does happen is in politics, you see this back and forth, right?
Mm.
I mean, why does the party, that has the presidency tend to lose in the next election?
Yep.
It's almost constant. I mean, there's been exceptions, but it's the same way here. We have this first election after the Trump victory, the Republican victory, and maybe some of that doesn't matter because most of it's blue state and New York, blue city. But I think the problem the Democrats have is this guy is going to be a spokesman, much like AOC. I think it helps people like AOC and Bernie Sanders within the party, and that's exactly the wrong way that the Democrats should be going. They should be going the other way. And
Shmuley,
Do you feel like
is often on about this particular subject, about young people in economics, that he finds and he just went to business school, and so he just got out, so he's around a lot of these people that they're not actually looking at things through like the traditional Marxist lens of their millennial peers, but they're more looking at things like technology and how it can enhance markets. And a lot of them, I forget what he called them, abundance Democrats. They're young kids coming up with ideas. They're more center left type Democrats. They have no voice in the party, right? None at all, because it's kids. But they're coming up with ideas like looking at cost benefits of things and reforms to certain systems, like the food stamp system, which is something I've advocated a long time, to where the abuses are excessive. And it's just interesting to me that those young Democrats talking about bread and butter issues and economics are being frozen out for the traditional just screech at people, call them a racist, and demand whatever you're demanding, infinite free stuff forever, right?
yeah,
Which is the millennial Democrat in a nutshell. No offense, millennial Democrats, but that's exactly your policies. A lot of boomer Democrats too, to be fair.
yeah, I
Makes
I
sense though,
have
because millennials and boomers, I mean, that's our parent millennials, that's our parents, right? So of course we're millennial Democrats and boomer Democrats are the free stuff forever crowd and the judgmental one. It's almost like they learned it. It's almost like they think they're rebelling against their parents, right? But they're not. Shocker. Or at least they get to about 30 and they realize that their parents weren't as crazy as they thought. Now, the conservative side of that, I have hope for conservative millennials when they realize that their parents weren't completely crazy, just like have a family, and their side, they mutilate their body and then tell everybody to call them by a different name. And I think that one of these things is worse than the other. And for that,
yeah.
I am every ist and phobe in the world, Sam. I don't know how I do it.
Well,
It's
you
really
know,
fun to just have a kid and get married, though. Like it's
it
pretty
is.
cool. I know they sell you
all
on
that-
the other one where you're just like, do whatever weird thing you want and nobody owns you and you're your own person. But man, is it really fun to build a life with somebody and have a kid? That's cool to me. That's why I'm corny.
It is. Although I have to ask, speaking of, crazy, lefties in the Supreme Court, how do you feel about you know, Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown? She's supposedly a legal scholar. How do you feel about your fellow
He's one
attorney
of the
not being able
finest
to
legal minds. Oh, you were asking him. Never mind.
yeah, how do you feel about a fellow attorney not being able to define a woman during her confirmation hearing? That's got to be painful for you
It's supposed
Yeah,
to be
well,
able
as an
to define
attorney.
anything. You're an
the
attorney.
whole process has become painful, though, right? Because now they don't want to answer any real questions. And honestly, the people asking the questions don't care what you answer, and nobody's determining anything based on what your answer is. Unfortunately for her, you can look like a fool rather than just answering the question. I think sometimes they've been coached so much that they don't want to say anything that could be controversial. I mean, it would have been simple enough to answer that question, and it wouldn't have derailed her ascension to the Supreme Court in any way. All she did was give people like Gutfeld and comedians all over the country a little information to throw into their act, and it's embarrassing for
And
her.
they've been doing this for a long time, but we haven't been pointing it and laughing at it until recently, because there's this element to their act, and it is an act, where they're like, I'm not doing that thing you're talking about. And
Mhm.
you're like, you know it. I know it. Everybody fucking looking at it knows it. Don't give me this crap and look at me with your cutesy little, I'm innocent, I'm not touching you. That's basically the way they argue. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. That's the left, right? Because
Well,
they are touching you, and they know they're touching you, and you know they're touching you, but they're trying to tell everybody they're not touching you, and you're just like, you know what? You're so disingenuous. I don't want to hear what you have to say at all.
Well, ever since Robert Bork, they ended up, now it's called being borked.
Yeah.
If you get derailed, and the whole thing is this guy had a lot of writing, that he had done, so they were able to throw out a lot of issues, and hard to backtrack on that when you're the guy writing it. So now we get people, who perhaps can't define what a woman is, and have no writing to speak of. We have an idea of what they're going to do on the court because of who appointed them, which is not what we should be looking at. We should, hopefully get 9 of the best scholars for the Supreme Court.
That's
would
the
actually
theory,
sit
right?
there and,
Like the 9 best legal minds would be who you'd want there.
You would, but I'm afraid you don't get much of that. I mean, I think there's a couple that are very good, but
There have been a couple that
there should
I
be
think
there should
very
be
funny.
9. I mean, we have an awful lot of attorneys in this country, but we're so used to just putting up political people and trying to get them through the nomination process.
When I say good legal minds, I don't even necessarily just mean all of the conservative justices, because I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was if you actually read a lot of what she put out there, it was less disagreeable than people paint her to be now that she's passed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for example, she'd always said that Roe v. Wade should have been overturned anyway. Like she was, and people don't understand that, but she said it should have been done as a law. It shouldn't be contingent on a Supreme Court ruling. Now they've made her the face of the opposite of what she believes, which is wild to me. Well, but that's because they never read one of the rulings she handed out. I like to read those because I think it's, especially if it's a relevant case of some kind, maybe just because I'm a nerd, but I do think it's important, and you get to know different justices' kind of stylings, and they really only come in 2 flavors. Are they a constitutionalist, or do they do whatever they want based on political?
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have any of the second one.
But I think part of the problem is you'll read people, it'll be interesting to see how Justice Thomas is treated by history, because I've read a lot of the stuff and I find it easy to read, and he has good logic, and he backs it up with legal precedent. And if you were to talk to some people who review the Supreme Court or report on it, or historians, they have a different view of him. And it's unfair, but that's the way it
What if,
goes sometimes.
yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, what is your biggest, I don't necessarily want to say concern or fear, but what do you feel legally is going to be a big issue in the future that we might not be considering right now in your mind?
In general or politically? I mean, I think,
Politically
Very
and
big
as
question, Sam.
kind of legally, I guess.
yeah, I
So
think,
both, he says, to make it bigger.
to me, well, yeah, that way you can pick anything, though. I mean,
True.
Yeah.
and I do think, I think AI is going to play a part in everything.
That was actually going to be my answer too. Like, I'm looking at stuff with AI, like I said, about if you haven't looked into like AI induced delusions or psychosis, it's crazy. It's way more prevalent than we'd ever thought in the past year or so. And
Yeah.
it's having disastrous results for people. So that's immediately, as just layperson, not legally minded, guy, I'm like, my first legal thing that we're going to struggle with is definitely AI, because let's say there's a case right now actually in the Supreme Court where the parents are suing OpenAI because it instructed their 16-year-old child to kill himself, and how.
Yeah,
And
well, and I think
and I
that's,
believe it's being opened up to be a class action suit for multiple people, but that's the primary case. I'm sorry.
I think, there's so many aspects to it and it's so new, but people are finding out that so much can be done. Everything from, we've had several cases where attorneys have used AI for research purposes and put that in memos and briefs and given it to the court
And it's
without
just flat out wrong.
it made up. Yeah,
Yeah.
there have been people who have cited cases that don't exist because AI wants to please you. So sometimes they come up with things that really don't exist. That's a problem, I think, in general, legally. I think politically, we've seen the start of that problem with the cases against Trump, where we're using the justice system to go after our enemies. And then we become, our democracy, everybody on the left talks about saving democracy. Well, what do you have if your court system, if your justice system is gone? If you are going to go after your opponent, depending on who wins, hey, you're going to get a lot of people that aren't going to want to serve. I'm not going to want to serve if I can be
I'm
indicted.
not sure that people have it in their head, especially younger people, that like the judiciary is that firewall against dictatorship. Like, I honestly don't think people know why there's 3 branches of government anymore. I don't think we teach kids civics like at all. In fact, I know, because I talked to a lot of recent graduates, right, that they're not being taught civics in high school or in college at all, in any variety, to the degree even I got as a kid
Well,
from the 80s, 90s, right? Now, they don't know the 3 branches of government and why. They might know that there are 3, right? But I got it explained to me why there was 3. The judiciary is essentially to handle all disputes, right? And that it's an arbiter and co-equal to the others and a check on everything.
Right.
They don't really get into checks and balances and things like that with kids nowadays. And so, of course, they grow up in the world not knowing any of that shit and not caring.
well, and I guess that was kind of, that part of the question why I was asking it the way I did, Dennis, is because to me, kind of looking from an outsider's perspective and, as someone younger in my 30s, to me, it seems like a lot of these younger lawyers coming up are more activists. It seems more and more like if you want to get into a legal firm or something like that, it's more of, who do you know and whatnot, as opposed
Well,
to how good are you at interpreting the law? And I'm just curious if you have any insights on that or what your general thoughts on
It's always been a
the
little
law
of
as far
that.
as that go.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had the problem of people maybe being hired for purposes other than they're the best attorney or the best graduate. Um, but I think now you do have this problem that's prevailing through. It goes through not only law, journalism for sure, where they're becoming activists. They think they've chosen to be on one side or the other. Where in law it used to be pretty simple, right? Whoever pays you is who you're representing,
Right.
and that's it. Whether you've got your own firm, you're working for a bigger firm, or you could be working for the government. That's your client. That's who you're supposed to represent. Now, I think some of them are filing cases even where they're finding anything to get into court and make laws. We see it with immigration, for instance, where people are, coming up with theories that have never been done before, but they know if they can get in front of an activist judge, they can get an order that basically gives them what they want. Maybe it only lasts a month or less as it goes up the court system, but sometimes it can last, a few years before the Supreme Court gets it. So I think it is a problem where,
An
you know,
example of that here in Massachusetts, our current governor Healy, when she was attorney general, ordered as a health crisis that semi-automatic handguns or all semi-automatics be banned. That got overturned by the Massachusetts Supreme Court. It took, I think, 3 or 4 years. And in the meantime, yeah, it made people criminals who otherwise owned guns. And it's still in the courts to a degree, even though it was overturned. It's been appealed again. And that's
yeah,
I often on the show bring up Kurt Doolittle. I don't know if you're familiar, but he is as a philosopher essentially. He runs the Natural Law Institute. And his big thing for years has been like, we on the conservative side of things need to get better at lawfare because it's being used against us aggressively all the time. And also, if you are like patriotic, if you're pro-America, if you believe in this country, you look to history, how a lot of those problems get solved is when it eventually gets to the Supreme Court. He's actually even the Institute is getting a case through their ultimate goal is to get it ruled on by the Supreme Court right now. They're working their way through the system. That's kind of their activism. But for that reason, that's why I'm more aware of like legal stuff and lawfare than I was before. Because Kurt is right. Once you start looking at it, is like that's the way they hit you around the like. Yes, Antifa, I've faced down in the streets, and they're like the street thug element of that side, but the legal element of that side is they're going at the edges of your rights. Essentially, they're eating at the around the edge of like, you got to do this now. And now we made a law that you can't have a gas stove and all this stuff. It's like they eat in through lawfare. And it's because they're always filing cases and grievances in every state and for political reasons and finding, like you said, activist judges who will give it to them.
yeah, it's a challenge.
It's like a slot machine. Sometimes they get 3 activist judges lined up and then that's the law.
Right. Well, when you see now, there for a while you saw it, where district court judges at the federal level would, make an order and apply it to the whole country. It's like, wait a minute, it was a little crazy. The Supreme Court had to jump in.
A lot of them coming from Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and I believe that because they think that they are in charge of the whole world. A lot of times around here, our legal system takes itself very seriously.
Well, right. It's forum shopping where these attorneys know, hey, we'll file it in the Rhode Island court. We know we're going to get a judge because out of all those judges, there's no conservative. So one of them is going to do well for us. So it's a problem with the legal system. I mean, I think 2 of the big issues, for this country are fixing the legal system and fixing the media.
Well, and that's honestly part of the reason why
That's why I
your
brought up
request to
Kurt, because
come.
that's their two mission statements.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons why your email, and your interest in coming on the show intrigued me is, I know a few other, conservatives who are attorneys, but they often feel like very isolated and alone, and that they can't really say much of anything because it might impact relationships that they have in the law world or something because of all these activists. So
Yeah,
um
that leads me. I have a question, Sam. Does writing this
yeah.
book, did writing this book, were you worried it might impact you in your legal career for those reasons? Because it's obviously about Trump, so it's a hot button issue.
Yeah, I mean there's some of that. There's still a worry about that, but I would say, where I'm at in my life, if that were to become a negative, then so be it. I
Hmm.
think in the end,
I
it's
think a
something
lot
that
of
you
people are there now, right?
have, right. And I firmly believe, and I've had this conversation with others, that if someone doesn't set history straight right away, I quote in the book Philip Graham, who was the publisher of the Washington Post. He got the job the old-fashioned way. He married the daughter of the publisher and then was promoted up. So it's been happening everywhere. But he
God,
was the
not
publisher,
nepotism. That's the worst thing ever.
right? But
Yeah.
hey, just because you didn't think of it,
We all
don't
hate nepotism until our uncle can get us a good job.
right. But Philip Graham's point was that newspapers are the first recorders of history, and I believe that's true. And for Trump, that recording of history has not been good. I mean, I think the newspapers, by and large, have been firmly against him. I mean, there's many more outlets now, including podcasts, and with Elon Musk buying X, you have a lot of bloggers. Fox News obviously is the king of the conservative journalism. So there are some outlets, but you're looking at all the main, what they call the legacy media and what I call the Dem media. That is just rock solid against Trump. They still are, and I think we need more people to go out there and tell the story.
And
And I think
even
the book
Fox
does that.
News pales in comparison, like I said, to the numbers that a guy with a microphone who used to play video games like Asmongold gets, right? And he's not exactly the biggest Trump guy. He's more of a centrist. But the point is that this guy who just played WoW for years and lives in a dirty basement actually has more sway with a larger number of people in what he believes and says than Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, because he gets regularly more numbers than them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that should tell you something, what people think of him. He's known for having a dirty house, but they'll listen to him before they'll listen to the establishment.
Well, right. That's in a way the media is changing. They won't change themselves, so outsiders are changing it. And I think, people, whether they're doing it on blogs or whether they're doing it on podcasts or, conservative radio has been big for years. I think that story's out there, but it's still, our problem is that we are in these cones, right? Of, your echo chambers where you're not sure you're convincing anybody. If people are reading, I would hope, in history, the books, you can pick up a book now and read something and go, oh, well, it was written 20, 30 years ago. Then you might have more sway. I think people who would pick up the book now that are, liberals or progressives, they would probably burn it or argue. They would say
Yeah.
this is all made up, even though we reference in here. There's countless references to we didn't just make this up as a theory. Here, I've got this idea. I would make sure we had documentation to prove the case that both Burr and Trump were treated unfairly. And I think it's important for future readers and generations that sit there and look at it and say, oh, well, this guy isn't just giving his opinion. He actually backed it up by referencing something that I can look at.
No, and you're right. These
Yeah.
blogs and streams and like even Fox News are all throwaway content, generally talking about the day's events that people have forgotten about. They're not going to go back and pick up a random episode of a blog, you
Right.
know, but a book that tells the story is timeless. That's a good point, and I didn't even consider that. But so you don't think that there will be much blowback? I actually don't think that there will either, because it's 2025 now, and people got so sick of the canceling like a while ago, but it's really turned up the last 2 years of people are just like, I actually never cared about any of that crap, and they're willing to say it now, which is nice, because that's the average person. It's not even that they're super against trans people or something. They're just like, I never cared.
Right.
You made me care
Yeah.
against my will and called me a bad person for not caring enough. That's all that was. It wasn't that I cared very deeply for your cause. It's that you're annoying.
Right. And I think you're right in that more people now are willing to fight it. A few years ago, if they came after you, a lot of the people they came after just folded, apologized, all their friends hid. Now it's like, wait a minute, I'm fighting back.
Part of that is they've learned a lesson that if you do apologize, they'll hold it as a guilty plea in a court.
Apologizing is
Yeah.
an admission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll
can't
hold it
do it.
over your head. Yeah. So what has your experience? Well, when did you publish the? When did you start writing this book?
Let's see. I think it started in June of would have been 2024, around June. Took me like 6 months to write it. Took another 5 months to actually get it published, in print and ready to go, which aggravates me because it's like, wait a minute, if I can write this, you ought to be able to print it quicker. And
Right.
and since May, it's been out, and I've been doing, some podcasts, meeting with people, trying to get it out there
Yeah.
as much as we can.
Well, I'm.
Our mission here has been, ever since Sam dipped his toe into writing, we've been trying to support independent authors like crazy because they've been so supportive of Sam.
Right.
And, so hopefully, people pick your book up just by, but usually he does the interviews by himself on not the live show. I'm not usually there for it because my shenanigans can be a bit much, admittedly. He's a much better interviewer too.
Well, but
I appreciate it because it's like the type of history I like a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think, I think your perspective of, merging history and, connecting it to today's world, it's something that you would hope is a lot more common, but unfortunately isn't in the book, Mark. And one of the things that I guess I haven't even read your book, although I'm going to pick up a copy now. One of the things just from this conversation that I'm hearing is, between Aaron Burr and Trump, the more things change, the more they stay the same, as the old saying goes.
Yeah. History repeats. I know, Trump, who I have a lot of respect for, is, fond of saying nobody's ever been treated like this before. Well, Aaron Burr would disagree. I think
Nixon would disagree. Jackson would probably disagree.
Right. Now, I think
to some degree, and I would disagree with him, but to some degree, Lincoln would disagree with that too.
But if I'm Trump, I'm going to say it anyhow because most people are going to go, yeah, you're right.
That's the most Trump thing to say ever.
Right. I don't blame him. For everything that he's gone through, he can say whatever he wants about these guys.
Yeah. I know that part of being an attorney, at least in courts, is it is, at least I would imagine, somewhat performative to an extent. And so, would you agree with that? And then also, do you feel that a lot of Trump's things are theatric and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first, attorneys, yeah, to some extent you are. I mean, most of the time, you're not in front of a jury, and most attorneys, I would guess, never appear before a jury. Although television would tell you every hour you're in front of a different jury, but the truth is,
Right.
But
you're
television
usually
doesn't tell you how many cases are actually settled long before they get to court. But
right. Or what's usually the case in litigation is you spend an awful lot of time dealing with the other attorney and with the judge in motions and status dates, and nothing's really happening. Now there might be a hearing here or there, and you can, give a good performance, to use your phrase, where you convince a judge. I mean, I've had a few. There was one where there was a case actually. I had left the case. I was the first attorney. I had withdrawn. I did it properly. They signed off on it, filed it, and this guy had then hired another attorney, and he had gone through. He was on the fourth attorney. Well, the fourth attorney decided, I'm going to sue the other three attorneys, including me. And
they can totally do that.
Right. So I get sued, and we're all in court, and it's kind of funny because each one of us has our own table, and this is all a motion. We file motions to dismiss. It looks as if the judge is going to keep me in the case, and I just start screaming, basically. And when you talk about performance and pounding the desk, it was kind of silly. And I was on my way to Wisconsin. I told my wife, we'll stop in. We'll be done in 10 minutes. We'll be on our way. This thing took from like 9 a.m. It's 2:00.
Oh.
I'm getting upset at this point. Finally, I try to explain to the judge pretty harshly that, I have the withdrawal. I've got the sheet right there. Everybody signed off. How can I possibly be responsible for what the third attorney did? And she finally, I think just to get rid of me, said, Mr. Brennan is right. He's dismissed. The rest of you have to come back Monday. Write up the order. And I thought, well, that's a good one. So that had some performance in it. Because
but it sounds like some legitimate anger too.
Yeah. And I was angry because like, wait a minute, how am I responsible for what this guy did? I have I had long been replaced long ago. So that, I think there are attorneys I've seen, when I was in law school, I worked with the state's attorney as an intern, and they would let us do cases. And I was doing the case, and it was supposed to be a loser. That's when they would let a student do it. So I'm doing it with what they called the third chair, the least experienced guy in the office. And all of a sudden, the defense files a motion to dismiss. The judge says no. Well, now the boss, our boss, is sitting in the back. He realizes these two idiots might win this case. He decides, we go to lunch, and he said, I'm jumping in. I'm taking over. I didn't care because I thought we got that far. I was happy to be, in the courtroom. The other guy was upset, the real attorney. But, they had just lost a case the week before to someone, and they claimed it was because the jury liked the attorney. They liked the way one of the women, I think, had a crush on him or something, and he was kind of playing around with the jury. So I think there was some performance there. I'm sure there was no performance.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's
The real performers in the legal field are the high-profile attorneys that you would know by name as a normal person usually. Those are the ones, because they're going to get called in a murder trial or some big corporate lawsuit. And their staff, I imagine, like Erin Brockovich is a good example. Her staff probably handles 99% of the actual legal work at this point in time because she's more of a celebrity lawyer than anything else, and more of a philanthropist or whatever, and into, you know, politics now. But if she were to do a law thing, or even, you know, classics like Johnny Cochran and thing, these were high profile attorneys you hire because they do give a good performance. That's
Well,
exactly why you'd get a guy like that.
Johnny Cochran had one of the great performances of all time, right? Now,
That's what you're paid for. Yep.
he was probably helped by, you know, the prosecutors who weren't
Oh,
as prepared as they should have been. And I think, you know, he was also helped by the judge. But I mean, he had some good lines, right? If it doesn't fit, you must have quit. And
yep. Good line, well delivered,
yeah,
stuck in people's mind. You say what you want about it, but that's all true. It worked.
right. It worked. In the end, that's all that matters. You know, we don't know why, but for him, you know, observing it, and it was on TV. Big difference whether you're on TV or you're not. You know, if it's
What?
being-
He probably has the most on-screen time of any attorney from one case.
probably.
Yeah.
Because that
What
went
is
on
your
for months.
What is your biggest, I guess, pet peeve, or yeah, what is your biggest pet peeve about like the legal profession? And then what do you think is the uh, most common misconception about being an attorney that you've run into?
I think you know, let's take the misconception. I think is most people think every attorney is rich. Like they think, oh, he's rich. Well, no,
Yeah.
most are not. You know, like everywhere else, there's some that make an awful lot of money, maybe too much, and there's some that don't make quite enough even to feed themselves. You know, so it depends. I think that's a big misconception amongst the public, and even maybe people that are thinking about becoming attorneys. If that's why you're doing it, probably not a great idea.
There is a bit of a starving lawyer phase, that's for sure.
Yeah. And you know, when I was young, I had someone, actually, he wrote one of these books up here. He was a politician, and he told me, you know, the best thing you can do is to move out where there's only like one attorney in town, and then you'll be the other attorney, and just wait, and people are going to move out that way. And I thought, I don't have time for that, buddy. I can't wait. I've got to eat. So it might have been good advice.
Yeah, it's wise advice, but doesn't feed you.
Right. I think he was given advice from his pocketbook, not mine. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, I can't do that. We got to come up with another idea. So, you know, I think it's difficult because people, they fall in love with the concept of attorneys on TV. You don't see many, you know, Better Call Saul, maybe that was one where he didn't look like much of an attorney. But, you know, most of the time, you think of attorneys.
You don't go to trial nearly as much as people think. That's
right.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact because 90% of it is a continuation hearing, I'm sure, of some variety. We got to have this checked on. Is there anything new? Nope. Okay, we'll come back in a month.
Well, and I think that leads to the point where you're asking, you know, what really, you know, ticks me off about it. There are a lot of attorneys who will say they're litigators. And when you break it down, they've done 0 trials. You know, like, for instance, my brother's done a lot of trials. You know, he was with the state's attorney. He has his own office. He's done a lot of trials of all kinds, criminal and, you know, civil. But there are some of those big firms where it's all settled. They never go to trial. They never have. They probably never will. But they will.
They don't handle the kind of cases that are going to go to trial in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we had that big, you know, opioid case, you know, all over the country. You know, none of that was really litigated. It all went into settlement. And it's like, okay, how much is it going to be is what it became.
I would imagine, though, it's good marketing, though, as an attorney, to say that you litigate every
Yeah,
case, right?
right.
Plays on that public perception of what a lawyer does. But just like
Yeah.
any other profession, you know, like people always forget, there's a grind in any profession. What it's going to be is probably paperwork and meetings that amount to we're going to see each other again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I
had to
think
take a wild guess. That's your grind. That's your fast food part of your work, right? That just sucks, is a meeting where you know it's going to be another meeting in a month. You know nothing's going to fucking happen.
yeah.
And a bunch of paperwork that you didn't really want to do.
Right. And I think when you, like here at least in state court, you can get away with a lot as an attorney, which is probably a problem for judges. They probably get upset, but, they'll give deadlines and then you don't meet the deadlines. And I know a friend who was in federal court and was shocked to find out I was in court that day, and it was like this judge actually told him, "You're not in state court. You're in federal court. When I give a deadline, you make sure you've hit that deadline, or you come in with a motion on why you can't." And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't want to be back here." This is, it becomes like the real deal, because in state court, you'd walk in and it's any county. You'd say, "Well, I haven't gotten to that yet. I need 10 more days. I need 4." And they give it to you, which is a problem
Well,
for the
and
litigant.
it's usually the same regular people that know each other too.
Yeah. And often the other attorney will say, "Yeah, no problem, judge. I did it." Where people, "You have any objection?" "No." Because I know next time it could be me, same case, and I didn't do something. I always thought it was funny, though. I was defending a developer on a lot of cases. And I'd get people mad at me, and I'd say, "Well, I'm just the attorney. I'm representing him. I get it. Not a nice guy, but so what? I'm here to represent him. If you pay me, I'd represent you,
Yeah.
but I'm
And you're
representing
much
you."
better dealing with me for that reason, because he's not a nice guy. I am.
Right.
Right. And often, the funny thing to me is I would go back and tell him, he'd say, "How did it go?" I'd say, "Well, continued. We've got 2 more months," knowing we have a loser case. We will lose if this ever goes to trial. And he would say, "Victory." He considered it a victory because we delayed it for 2 months. And all the delay was the other side was just slow doing their job. They weren't pushing it fast enough.
So
And they would say, "Judge, I need
I was
30 more
actually
days."
charged with years ago, 15 years ago now, with assault on my brother,
Hmm.
because we had a fight where he, attacked me or whatever, and he got a black eye in a scuffle because he headbutted me, and my mom is petty, so she called the cops, and the cops saw a case that they could charge to the moon because it's a small town and they already knew me and didn't like me. So they were like, they looked it up and they found there was a new law in the books, which has since been rescinded, and it's partly because of my case. But it was handicapped, elderly or disabled person, assault on a handicapped, elderly or disabled person made it a felony charge. So that's what they charged me with. Now, my defense was self-defense, but if you read the law as written, it excludes self-defense as a defense, because
Okay.
it was written for caretakers, not
No.
brothers who don't even live
Yeah.
with. And
Right.
he was 16, I was 20, 21 or something, 20, I don't know, 27. That's what it was. I was 10 years older than him. And he's a huge guy as well. He's as big as me. I'm 6'5". He's about the same size nowadays. And he got mad at me about something. He punched me a couple times, and he tried to grab me. He headbutted me, hit him right here. He got a black eye. And I was my obvious defense, like from the moment I got arrested, and I had scratches all over my back from him scratching me. He like made it bleed and it got infected. I took pictures of it all, and I was prepared, right? I was ready. I'm going to defend myself in court. 5 years of continuations later, because what I found out at the end, my lawyer told me what had happened. It was a new law that had just been passed they understood my case was a test of it that they didn't want to do. They wanted a settlement, like always, for everything, right? They wanted a plea.
Mm-hmm.
So they passed it around from prosecutor to ADA. For 5 years of my life, I was out on bail and couldn't so much as cross the street without being at a crosswalk, you know? And at the end of the day, they didn't want to take it to trial so much. They gave me an Alford plea, which I know you know what that means. And because I just refused to say I'm guilty, you know? And that was it. But there was a waste of 5 years of my damn life, you know? Going to court, and my lawyer, this is why I know what the grind of his job is, because it was the same thing I was mad about. We're going to go in today. It's going to be delayed for a month. We both know it. And it has, maybe he maybe thought it was a winner. Maybe actually he said, like, morally, he was with me to go to court. Legally, I should take the deal. That's what he said. But he was ready to do it. He knew how much I had invested in it. And there was a good chance my brother wasn't going to actually testify against me anyway.
Right.
Because he idolized me. But I took the deal because I'm stupid. But either way, no, I didn't want to chance it to a jury, I guess. But either way, I'm there going, and it's like he knows it has no bearing on the case, this delay. And for several years, the reason it was years, I know that's probably excessive even to you, right? Is because we were trying to get his records from school because he had always beat up teachers. We were trying to prove, like, this kid flips out and punches people. That's obvious, right? And they're like, oh, but to get those records, we have to have a continuation. And then next month it's a continuation. And next month it's a continuation. And you can't leave the state. And it's basically like being on probation or something, right? Or I go to jail because my bail is now revoked for any stupid thing. And that's the only time I've ever been charged with a crime in my whole life, to boot. So I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I actually originally said I didn't want a lawyer because I'm stupid. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
need a
think-
lawyer for this, Judge. I defended myself. And he was like, no, you have to have a lawyer, actually. And you're going to go talk to him.
Yeah. Smart. Everybody
And I
needs a
did.
lawyer.
And I realized that it was smart.
Yeah.
Gave me a lot of good advice. I'm not
Um,
satisfied with the outcome, but man, can they drag their feet when they want to. Like, they want to keep the case burning. They don't want to dismiss it, but none of them wants to actually to be the one to take it to trial, so much so that they all said they weren't going to take it to. And I should have known. That's why I say I'm stupid. I should have fought it, because if they're so afraid. But he didn't tell me till after I signed the paper that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were all like, this is the test case and we're going to lose it. And that makes, they're going to be mad at us up in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Which it ended up another case where an autistic kid bought fake weed for somebody and beat him up with a baseball bat. That was the test case that did get it overturned because they charged the guy he beat with the baseball bat with a felony for defending himself. The same thing, only more exaggerated. Just because the kid had autism, they decided he was disabled. Therefore, this was assault on a disabled person, and self-defense isn't a defense even if he's beating you with a baseball bat. They thought that was the test case to take to court, and they lost, and then they repealed the law and reframed it to be specific about caretakers and things. It no longer, it's got a different designation and everything. But I'll tell you, I was facing 10 years in prison for it. Federal, not federal, a felony. So like Walpole State, which is famous, a bad prison here.
Sure, I've heard about it on Ray Donovan on the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
It's one of those. Yeah, and I don't want to go there. I'm a peace-loving kind of guy, you know. I don't want to go to jail. So the whole time, I'm every month they're like, yeah, we're just going to delay it. And I'm like, why are they delaying it? And he's like, I don't know. And if I'd known that they're just delaying it because they don't want to, there's nothing I could have done different anyway. So it's good that he didn't tell me. Because all you can do is be aggravated with the process sometimes. And I'm sure so that's one thing. I'm sure there's been cases you've handled where you've been aggravated with the process on behalf of your client, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every attorney's had that where it goes on, or, there's parts where you have to start and stop, or a judge won't accept something. There's been those cases too. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets tough, and after that, obviously, I've been kind of more interested in these kind of issues, and that's why I'm into it. Although it is funny, because I didn't even think about that you were an attorney. I was thinking we had an author on tonight. It is funny that my list tonight, for my top 10 list, if you wouldn't mind, Sam, is about suing my wife. And the reason for that is that we know a guy that did that and thought it was the stupidest thing ever. Just to say. And also, my wife helped me write it, for anybody out there. It's like, because last week, I don't know, you probably don't follow this kind of thing, okay? But there's now a legal case about it, so you might hear about it, where a Twitch streamer, Emiru, she goes by, came publicly out that her ex-boyfriend had been abusing her and did a stream about it. And one of the things, and he did a response, and now he's suing her and other people for defamation. But in his response, he mentioned that she had thrown plushy bears at him, which is what justified him to like punch walls and things. And so my last week's list was the top 10 things my wife has thrown at me on stream, more dangerous than a plushy bear. And it's true. All 10 of them were true things, because I make jokes sometimes, you see, and my wife's over there and she just kind of gets mad at me, and I get hit with like a shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. I know somebody's gonna put a stop one day, but I got my top 10.
Yeah.
My revenge, Sam.
So, yeah, let's get on with that. Anything more you want to discuss with the book at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
Promo in the book too. Yeah.
Alrighty.
We definitely.
Yeah.
We always try to promo at the up and the end. Although Sam forgets to do that for his own books. He hasn't done that once tonight. But anyway.
I do, but we have a guest, so I'll save my book promo for the end. So
I know. I'm always on his case. He never promos nearly enough. They're good books, Sam.
I know.
I just figure it's very funny there will be a lawyer on, because you'll probably find these very funny. But anyway, in the case, it is about the plushy bears. There's also several other references to this case. It just came out today, and it's related to streamers on Twitch. So I doubt it's been something that's crossed your desk. So I figured I'd preface that with a little bit of explanation. But these are the top 10 reasons I should sue my wife, Maxine Sand, who joins us on the show almost every week. And also hosts her own, the Sandwich Makers broadcasts that I joined for a lot of times on Saturdays. This is why I should sue her. Number 10, slandering me by saying I didn't put the toilet seat down. This is slander. This affects my reputation, Sam, and it's not true. I don't know how, and I don't know what money I'm out for it, but that doesn't matter. This is America. Number 9, and this is to Nick Fuentes said that your wife should be your subordinate, and so my wife, for not being my subordinate, I should sue her, because I never thought of that, Sam. See, we'd always had a partnership thing going on, and now I'm being told I'm supposed to tell her what to do. Do you know how hard that's going to be, Sam? She don't listen.
Yeah,
I'm going to need legal backing for this. Anyway, number 8, dipping my finely cooked steak in ketchup. Sam, this caused me severe emotional damage. I cooked that steak perfectly, and here she is. She dipped it in ketchup. Not even Heinz 57, no, Walmart brand. The indignity.
That might be suable. I don't know.
Number 7, POVT, post office viewing trauma. I have been traumatized by her repeat viewing of The Office for years, Sam. Over and over again. It's The Office, The Office. And I just hear it in the background and I just want to like tell these people to like grow up. But then I realize they're fictional characters and that makes me a little crazy. That's what she does to me. The Office. The song, Sam. The song never stops playing. Number 6. This is a big one, Sam. Being much more popular than me. I'm going to sue her for that. It hurts my feelings.
Okay, Ms.
Number 5. Punitive damages. Just generally. For everything. I was very hurt. She hurt my feelings, and then I fell down the stairs. My shoes fell off. Number 4, speaking of which, injuries as a result of winning a video game. Sam, I have video evidence of this. I beat her in a video game, and I went, eh. And then she went, and I went, woo. And my pants fell down, and my bum was exposed, and I was very embarrassed, Sam.
That is true.
Number 3. I think this is the big one. I think this could be a class action husband lawsuit. General wife naggery, Sam. It's a new category we're inventing. General wife naggery. Some judge somewhere is going to buy it.
Yeah.
Probably in Indonesia. But that's okay. I bet you in Saudi Arabia that one would fly. General wife naggery.
I think that might be the only country where that flies legally.
Number 2, Sam. Acceleration of brain damage. On account of all the things flying in my head. I already had the brain damage. I can't blame her for that. That come from getting hit in the head by dudes when I was fighting and stuff. But like the acceleration of it. That was number 2. We read them back. Top 10 reasons I should sue my wife. And I'd love to hear the lawyer's reaction to any of these after. Slandering me by saying I didn't put the toilet seat down. That one's probably a class action too. The toilet seat down. 9 for not being my subordinate. 8 for dipping my finely cooked steak in ketchup. 7, POVT, post office viewing trauma. Number 6, being much more popular than me. Number 5, punitive damages. Number 4, injuries as a result for winning a video game. Number 3, general wife naggery. Number 2, acceleration of brain damage. And the number 1 reason I should sue my wife, Sam, I learned stuffies and plushies. Holy, you see? A sloth, Sam. These are dangerous weapons of mass destruction, Sam. You see? Look at his little eyes. Look, his little beady eyes of death over here. These things should not be allowed for sale.
Well, I don't...
Traumatized, Sam.
Well, I mean...
There's a sloth.
What
does that even mean?
I don't know what else to say other than you married her. You have to put up with her abuse. So I don't know.
And I like it. It's comedic and stuff,
Yeah, I mean, I think your defense. I think
Well, I thought people were just suing for stupid stuff now. That's why I made the list, Sam.
Well,
you're gonna sue a girl because she threw a plushie at you? Good luck, brother.
You
think you're even gonna get a settlement out of that?
I mean, Dennis, I would imagine you've unfortunately probably run into some pretty stupid lawsuits or other legal conundrums in your time.
Well, I've been lucky. I have, I don't think I'd take any of those, so um, I wouldn't prosecute them. And defense wise, I haven't seen any, but yeah, I read about them from time to time, and I always think,
Yeah.
why is someone suing for this? How did they? It's kind of silly, and usually those used to be thrown out pretty quickly. I don't I don't think that's the case anymore.
Nah, and a lot of times it's like, especially when it comes to internet people suing each other, it's literally a tactic by one or the other to try and like bankrupt the other person almost universally, right? Because it's not even about whether they have a good case, I think, in most cases, because it's another way to keep themselves relevant, because they'll have like lawyer YouTube channels talking about their case and things like that.
Yeah. It's
And
just drama.
so they're literally using lawsuits to farm content now. It's wild to me because there's a lot of repercussions to that kind of thing, but okay. Good luck with that strategy, right? Because, like, for example, this guy, the accusations she made were essentially like he was a bit overbearing about what she wore and things, and that he punched walls. He never said he hit her or anything like that, but that he punched walls, and that at one point when they were broken up, he'd maybe gone too far for her liking when she was crying, and he was comforting her. He took liberties that she didn't appreciate. That's the extent of what she's accused him of. And his defense was, well, yeah, I punched some walls. It's because she was throwing plushy bears at me.
So, yeah.
But she's slandering me. So I'm suing her. And he sued another streamer named Asmongold for talking about it. And he sued a couple of like promotion companies for firing him. He's saying it's a breach of contract. And I just think it's very funny that the whole thing is like, so your girlfriend threw a plushy bear at you. This is the legal hill you want to go die on.
Yeah.
Plushy bears. You could always just make fun of them. You could always just not. But hey, now he's going to open it up to discovery because his Discord messages are at question. So surely that can't be a bad idea. A girl threw a plushie bear at you. You should let them comb through every message you've ever sent on Discord. I'm sure there won't be anything in there that's embarrassing. That will be court record.
Yeah, probably not.
Brilliant legal minds of the day that want to farm content off of lawsuits, right? I always find it fascinating. People have threatened to sue me several times. I've said the same thing. It's like Johnny Fox is one. Dave is like at a functional IQ level that used to be called retarded, but he threatened to sue me, and so I told him how to fill out the paperwork. And where to go. I looked up his local courthouse, what forms he had to file, told him what to fill it all out. He never did.
But
because I thought it would be very funny to have played my video of him like yelling slurs at his neighbors, because that's my show, right? I watch these crazy guys on the internet, and so he had a megaphone. He was yelling slurs at his neighbors, and he wanted to sue me for watching his video he put on YouTube. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, sue me then. Yes, we'll show a jury this video of you yelling the N-word at your neighbors. I'm sure that won't be bad for you at all. Like, it's amazing how young people think of lawsuits is what I'm saying, because they think of no, Dave's not even young. He's just young in his brain.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't say things about him, but I love Dave. He's great. That's been always the thing, right?
Anyway,
he's great, and he wants to sue me.
Anyway, though, Well, Dennis, I appreciate your time and you coming on. So one last time, the book is whoops. Let me go
And
back
if you
here.
can drop the link in chat, that would
Yeah,
help.
it's DC
Yeah.
Swamp Strikes Back, Aaron Burr, Donald Trump, and their similar battles. It's available on
Yeah, and
Amazon.com.
yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's only $2.99 on Kindle, so heck of a deal.
Yep.
And then also in hardcover format. Do you have any plans to write any sequels or any other books in the process at this
Yeah,
time? Or
I have another one that's written, but it hasn't been edited yet, so we're not ready to do anything with it. But yeah, I have another one
5-star
written.
rating, I'd like to point out. I'm sorry, but that's impressive.
yeah,
Oh,
6 actually by my
Well, 6
count.
ratings, but his overall rating is 5 stars. That's hard to actually, that's hard to get, Sam.
Yeah, that's very hard to get. So go and check this out. Great cover as well. So
well, thanks a lot for having me. I enjoyed it.
Oh, pleasure, and we would love to have you on again. Maybe have you on the Monday show. But yeah, go and check out Dennis's book, and I will drop the link in chat on YouTube and link it in the show notes for people.
Like, I'm only partially familiar enough to with the subject matter to definitely want to pick this up myself, not gonna lie. So
Yeah, so I will definitely share the link around, and then
and Sammy surprised me with the new release this week. That's why I was like, you haven't promoted your new book once.
yeah, so I have a new book out as well. I actually was on Joe's Atmosphere, who's in chat right now. So thanks for having me on earlier tonight as well. My new book is, let's see here. Let me switch over real quick. Well, I have I have the paperback. My new book is Blood Ties Volume 2.
Oh,
It's
Blood Ties 2. Sam's dipping back into the mafia stuff.
Yep, it's the sequel to Blood Ties Volume 1, awesome. Which is my crime novella anthology series. And if you like pulp detective stories, folks love the first volume. So Volume 2 is out now. 4 novellas and 3 short stories. And so this just released this week, and really appreciate everyone who has already picked up a copy on sale now. So be sure to pick up a copy.
Let me get a good look at that cover, Sam.
Yeah. So
nice.
Here's the page on Amazon. So thanks to everyone for supporting me as an author, and go check out Dennis's book as well, because he deserves it. And welcome to the indie author community, sir. So,
great, thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm just happy to have somebody around. There's so much fiction writers. It's refreshing to see a nonfiction work. Although I will say, I read the World War one I read just recently. We had him on.
Travis Davis.
Yeah. That one was non-fiction technically too, but Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty rare, a lot of big fiction writers, and it's nice to see something, a little more grounded. Like I say, I don't think people think much of history nowadays in terms of politics and the lessons that can be gleaned from it. So whenever I see a light shined on that, I'm for it.
Indeed, indeed. Well, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to tonight's program. And Mr. Brennan, where can people find you besides the book if they would like to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website is authordennisbrennan.com. I'm on X at Dennis Brennan 61. Also on Facebook, Dennis A. Brennan. Any of those will connect you.
Yeah. I just followed
Alrighty.
you before the show. We'll retweet out on Twitter, especially, just so people can follow you if they want.
Yeah,
you.
and as with all the guests, folks, obviously YouTube takes a bit to process the live streams, but I will have Dennis's links in the podcast show notes if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and all that. Mr. Brennan, I really appreciate your time, and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys as always. So
You as well.
I'll be back Monday with Terrence LeHue, another author, and then next Wednesday, who knows what we'll be dealing with, and then this Friday, Bits and Bones, 10 p.m.
Yep.
That's Mortheous' show. And then Sandwich Makers Saturday night.
Yep.
So, take care, everyone, and appreciate everyone tuning in. God bless.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless. God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.